All right, everybody, welcome back into cherry picking today's video. Buy low, sell high for goalies. I think it's a good idea to really go through the goalie list once every month or so. If you tried to do it like every single week, I feel it would get relatively repetitive, and there's just not a ton going on in the goalie scene most of the time throughout the NHL season. But this year, there's been a lot of injuries. Obviously, there's a lot going on with the Edmonton goalie situation, now the Carolina goalie situation, which I will address in this video as well. And there's definitely some faces that are starting to emerge that I think will be better options for the rest of the season that maybe have had a slow start, and definitely some guys who have played really well to start the season, and I don't think that will really last, so we're going to be getting them off your team. But as always, the video presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook. One really cool prop that you can bet on FanDuel that's not available on every single sportsbooks is save props, so you can bet over-under on how many saves a goalie's going to finish with, and you can also bet shutouts as well over at FanDuel. So that link is in the description if you want to download that. Let's get into the video for buy low, sell high goalies. All right, so the first goalie we're going to be buying low on is Devon Levi on the Buffalo Sabres. So a little bit of goaltender turmoil, I would say, in Buffalo to start the year. You know, they had Eric Comrie, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and then Devon Levi added into the mix at the end of last season and was supposed to be their starter throughout this season as well. Had a little bit of a slow start, got sent down to the AHL for a bit to maybe just get his footing a little bit more. But then since he's returned with, UPL going through injuries, Eric Comrie going through injuries, he's been much better. You know, he's been actually one of the best goalies in the NHL since December 1st. He's fourth in the NHL in goals saved above expected, and then he's also sporting a 3-0-1 record in 4 starts with a 171 goals against and a 942 save percentage. So playing a really great brand of hockey right now for this Buffalo Sabres team. I think Buffalo obviously had a little bit of misfortune to start the year. They weren't playing too great. As I mentioned, had some bad luck with goaltending. Defensively, they weren't playing great as great either, but have definitely started to play a lot better more recently. And then you also had injuries to Tage Thompson, who went down. He's now back. So a little bit more of a full lineup will certainly help this team and really help Devon Levi, become a goalie that you can start on a night-to-night basis in fantasy hockey. I think one of the better things too, he's not like he's playing insane right now. Sure, his numbers are great, but I think they're putting a really good defensive front and structure in front of him as well. Since December 1st, since he's really been on this tear, he's only 30th in expected goals against, so they're really limiting opportunities against Devon Levi right now, which I think is obviously really important. So there's definitely options I think you can trade for right now. I think there's definitely a couple guys that are maybe right on the cusp of being like a bust season or could still be like a relatively consistent, solid season. And I think those are being kind of hid by how good some of these teams are. Like a guy like Vitek Vanacek, I would trade Vanacek to get Devon Levi 100%. Schmid's starting to get a few more starts as well. I think, Nico Dawes was skating with the team just last week as well. I know Vanacek was out for a game for personal reasons or an illness, but it seems a little bit shaky over there. So Vanacek I would trade for Levi for sure. Another couple list of guys, Varlamov I would try to trade and get Levi. He's only 57% rostered, so there's a chance if you're not in a super deep league that he is available on your waiver wire. I highly doubt it, but these are just some other names that you can try to get him for. Korpisalo as well. I would even go with Ville Husso, and then even Jacob Markstrom as well. He's just coming back from injury. They have Dustin Wolf down in the minors who played solid in his kind of when Markstrom was out, and then they also have Vladar over there, but the biggest thing with trying to get Devon Levi on your team is if people know about him and how big of a prospect he was over his last 2 years in the NCAA. He was one of the best goalies in the NCAA. His first season with Northeastern posted 21 wins in 32 starts with a 154 goals against and a 952 save percentage. So some really solid numbers in the NCAA. Northeastern's team wasn't like all that good. I think they made them look a lot better than they actually were. So Devon Levi is definitely a guy that I think will start to become a lot more fantasy relevant as the Buffalo Sabres start to depend on him a lot more, considering how inconsistent their goaltending has been to start the season. All right, so the first guy we're going to be selling high on is Connor Ingram on the Arizona Coyotes. This guy has kind of come out of absolutely nowhere this season. He's been easily the best player for the Arizona Coyotes. He's second in the NHL in goals saved above expected, so really just winning the Arizona games just outright. The offense hasn't been as great as of lately. Started off relatively hot on like a very efficient type of offense with a really high shooting percentage, but we've seen that kind of come down. But Connor Ingram's kind of continued to play really solid so far in the year. 12 wins and 6 losses. 241 goals against average, and a 930 save percentage. But as I mentioned, kind of came out of nowhere because last year he was 6-13 with a 340 goals against, and even the couple games that he played with Nashville where he started his NHL career, his goals against average was like 3.8 in like 4 or 5 games as well. So really interesting to see how well he's playing, especially because Arizona really is not that good. If you look at their analytics and their numbers, I think you can kind of expect some regression coming on Connor Ingram's way because he can only play this well and save this team from looking like a bottom 5 team in the NHL for so long. They're 29th in shot attempt share, 23rd in shots allowed against, 22nd in expected goals against, 27th in scoring chances allowed, and then 23rd in high danger chances allowed per game. So all of those pretty much in the bottom 10 of the league right now. That's definitely not a team I want to have my starting fantasy hockey goalie on, especially a guy who right now who's top 5 in fantasy hockey points amongst goaltenders. So definitely a guy I would try to flip right now towards a guy who I think could maybe just start playing a little bit better as the season goes on here. Like try to target guys who had shaky starts. Like a perfect example would be Philip Gustafsson. You might have missed out on the train a little bit because he's been really good since the start of December, but Connor Ingram's been, like I mentioned, top 5 fantasy hockey goalie. So definitely you have a lot of bandwidth with how you can trade him right now. Carter Hart's another guy, maybe even Logan Thompson, depending on what's going on with Adin Hill. Adin Hill now, he's got hurt for this is the second time in 3 weeks that he's gotten hurt and been sidelined. So he could be a good option if Logan Thompson ends up taking over the net. And then even try and go for guys like Igor or Allmark. Like Allmark's splitting time with Swayman, but I think down the stretch, I'd rather have Allmark. And Shesterkin's had a pretty shaky start to the year. Jonathan Quick's almost been like outplaying him. He almost has as many wins in him in a lot less games or fewer games. So that's also very surprising to see there too. And another good option I'd try to get Connor Ingram for is Tristan Jarry. But Connor Ingram, 5th in fantasy hockey scoring. I can almost guarantee this guy's going to finish outside the top 15 when the season's all done with. So get him off your team while you still can. All right, so this buy low option is definitely interesting, I would say. This goalie is 64% rostered. Seeing him available in a lot of leagues as well, even in like 12-man leagues or 10-man leagues, but it's Darcy Kuemper on the Washington Capitals. So 15 games played so far to start the year, 7 wins and 6 losses, so right around 500 with a 297 goals against and 897 save percentage. So not great numbers. Has yet to have a shutout so far this year. His goal saved above expected is in the positives, which is definitely good to see, but since December 1st, out of goalies who have played at least 4 games played, he has the 3rd lowest expected goals against, which means his team is actually playing really well in front of him. And as much as Charlie Lindgren has been the go-to guy and probably one of the better goalies throughout the month of November and the beginning of December, I do think Kuemper will come back and be the number 1 goalie for this Washington Capitals team as he starts to slow down. I just think he has obviously much more pedigree than Charlie Lindgren. We've seen Lindgren actually go through these months where he's been like a top goalie in the NHL, but it usually ends up falling off a little bit. So I think that will continue to happen, or we'll see that happen. And we've seen it in a few games here and there more recently as well for Lindgren. But Kuemper, on the other hand, he's been really good. He had a couple tough starts at the beginning of December, but since then, his last 2 starts, he's been really solid. 2-0 with a 144 goals against and a 952 save percentage. If there's a goalie you want to take a risk on that's not going to cost you a whole lot, it's going to be Darcy Kuemper, because the Washington Capitals are kind of in that go territory where they're going to either make a move for a playoff spot or kind of just like finish off the season missing the wild card spot by a couple points right now, because they're right in the playoff hunt after a pretty solid start to the season as well. I also don't think that this team defensively is as bad as people might think. They're upper half of the league in expected goals against, shots allowed. So I think the defensive scheme and the structure they have in front of Darcy Kuemper is a lot better than what people might think. They have John Carlson, Rasmus Sandin, and then a bunch of stay-at-home defensemen who can block a lot of shots. So that's obviously really good. Guys I'd try to take a stab at for Kuemper is like similar of who I was talking about for Devon Levi, like a guy like Varlamov, Korpisalo, maybe Joey Decord. You can try to trade and try to get Kuemper for, considering he's turning into that starting goalie and the best goalie really on that Seattle Kraken team as well. So this is a Darcy Kuemper whose last 2 years has finished top 12 in fantasy hockey scoring amongst goalies as well. So if you can try to get a piece of Darcy Kuemper and he can play like that, like he did the last 2 seasons, that's obviously a huge win when you're not giving up a whole lot. All right, so the other goalie we're selling high on in this video is Jordan Binnington on the St. Louis Blues. Currently having a really good year to start the year for sure. Is I think making the St. Louis team look a lot better than they actually are. He's 6th in fantasy hockey points scored amongst goalies right now, but he has the highest expected goals against number in the NHL, which means he just gets peppered every single night. And any game that St. Louis wins, I would say it's pretty much all thanks to him. And even Joel Hofer has been similar. Hofer's had some really good nights and some really bad nights. That's kind of what happens when on a consistent basis you have to stop 32 to 35 shots and a ton of high danger scoring chances against as well. So Jordan Binnington, definitely a guy I'd be looking to sell right now. And with what I mentioned with his highest expected goals against number, he has a lot of starts as well under his belt. I think 23 or 24, which pretty much is tied with Alexander Georgiev for most starts amongst goalie this year. It would probably be Georgiev, Saros, and then I would say Jordan Binnington are probably the top three right now. But if you look at St. Louis's team as a whole, I just can't see Jordan Binnington continuing to play like this. Now, if you're in a league where his saves is counted for a lot of points, I would maybe consider holding on to him because he's going to continue to make a lot of saves with all these shots that he's getting every night. But the wins will start to dwindle away, and I think his stats as well as right now. Even he's a top 6 fantasy hockey goalie, but his goals against is three and above, and then his save percentage is right around that 900 number right now. So not someone I really have a ton of faith in. If you're looking at St. Louis's analytics and numbers, 23rd in shot attempt share, 27th in shot attempts allowed per game, 27th in expected goals against, 22nd in scoring chances allowed, and then 24th in high danger chances. So very similar to Arizona, but almost a little bit worse we're seeing defensively here. So not a guy that I want to really have a ton of faith in as this season goes along, because I think St. Louis is headed in the wrong direction. Like, I know they just fired their coach and they have a little bit of vig right now, but I still don't think this roster is all that great. So I don't think that gives me a ton of confidence in a guy that I'm going to be starting on a nightly basis in fantasy hockey. And if you look at since December, he has the third most shots against other than Jussi Saros and Andrei Vasilevsky, who will start a lot of games like Binnington, but I'd much rather have those two guys than Jordan Binnington when you have all those shots coming in on you. So as I mentioned, this roster, not all that great. As much as I want to believe that Binnington can make this team look like a playoff team and even like squeak into the playoffs, I think there's a better chance we see some regression from Binnington considering all the volume he's getting right now, and we see these Blues team end up below 500 and out of a playoff spot because currently they are just inside or outside the wild card spot depending on when this video gets dropped. So Jordan Binnington, definitely a guy I'd be looking to sell high on. All right, so the last goalie we're going to be talking about in this video is Pyotr Kochetkov on the Carolina Hurricanes. Currently 56% rostered still, even with the fact that Antti Raanta has been waived and obviously probably won't be back on this team at any point this season. They're obviously looking for different options to kind of fill the gaps with Freddie Andersen out with this blood clot issue that he's dealing with. So they've called Aaron Dell over for a PTO, and then also Yanni Peretz, who they called up from their ECHL affiliate, who was in the NCAA last year, won the 2023 NCAA championship with Quinnipiac. So we'll talk about those two guys in a little bit, but Kochetkov, first off, seems like he's going to be the go-to guy for the Hurricanes, which means you just need to have this guy on your team. Carolina has been easily the unluckiest team this season, I would say. They're outshooting their opponents, I would say, in almost every game. If you look at all their games compiled into one, their shot attempt share is almost 60%, which actually leads the NHL. So if you need wins, you're going to want to add Pyotr Kochetkov, I would say. And if you look at where these goalies have finished in years past, like both Hurricanes goalies finished last year in the top 40 of fantasy points scored amongst goalies, but they both had, like, Freddie Andersen had like 30 starts and Antti Raanta had like 27 starts. But if you look at Freddie Andersen from the year before that, he finished top 12 amongst goalies in fantasy hockey points scored with 50-plus starts. So the Carolina Hurricanes have 51 games left. If Kochetkov plays 30 to 35 of those games, he can definitely finish within the top 15, top 10 of fantasy hockey goalies in points scored. So I definitely think he's a viable option to try to target right now. Would probably be him and Levi would probably be the top two guys I'd be trying to target for the rest of the season, alongside Darcy Kuemper as well, if you're looking for a ranking from those three players. And then if you're going to add Kochetkov, keep your eye on the situation that's happening with their backup, because obviously Rob Brind'Amour, have you seen in the past 3 years, likes to mix in different goalies and not just rely solely on one goalie. They've also been dealt some unfair luck, I would say, with just injuries in general. But Yanni Peretz, I think, is the most interesting of the bunch, because if he gets going in this Carolina like structure in terms of they block a lot of shots, they dominate the shot attempt share, so he really won't have to do a ton on a nightly basis. I think he can actually have a sneaky good season, because if you see how much he was relied upon when he was on Quinnipiac, it's insane. He played from 2021 to 2023. His record, he had 56 wins in 70 games, 56, 9-5. He had a 134 goals against average throughout 3 seasons, and then a 935 save percentage and 21 shutouts. So he almost had a shutout every 3rd game for this Quinnipiac team. And I know NCAA is much different than the NHL, but this guy has been relied upon in a different sense, and I think it could almost translate in the NHL when you're playing like a team for Carolina as well. Now, Aaron Dell, 10 to 11 year veteran in the NHL. I think he's almost like 38 years old at this point. I don't know how much they're going to be relying on him. It could just be like a safety blanket at this point, but still keep your eye on that guy as well. But as of right now, the main priority ad and guy you want to go get is Pyotr Kochetkov. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of buy low, sell high goalies for this week. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The link to download the FanDuel Canada app is in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.